Check out the Rugby Rant podcast show.
Thank you, Scott Barrett, for that wonderful introduction. And you should take it from an All Black. Watch the Rugby Rant podcast show. But if you're watching this, you are watching the Rugby Rant podcast show. You have taken Scott Barrett's advice. But no, seriously, welcome. It's episode 239 of the Rugby Rant, and I am the Hammer, Rob Hammerschmidt from the Rugby Rant. I am flying solo. This doesn't happen very often. In all of, I think, the 7 years that we've been doing the Rugby Rant, or going on 7 years, we've never had Ty, when he was with the show, Scott or myself, fly solo. We've done little bits and pieces, but never an entire show by ourselves. So I'm going to have a go, because I think we're an important week of the MLR season. And speaking of that, that's going to be the focal point for the show a little bit, is to kind of transition from the end of the regular season into the playoffs. And so real quick, what are we going to be talking about here on 239? And that is week 11. It's playoff time now, folks. After week 11, it is playoff time. Can the Hounds have the perfect season? We know they had the perfect regular season, 10-0. We'll do a deep dive into that. But, you know, can they finish this off? Make it 12-0, win the Shield. That'll be part of the analysis today. But in addition, I also want to kind of deep dive into week 10. The weekend 11's games coming off the back of week 10. I think there was some misinformation out there about opportunities for teams to find themselves into the playoffs. And so I want to clarify that just a little bit, talk about the games during week 11, what they might tell us about the playoffs this coming weekend. And I'll also give you a flavor for my picks for postseason. Sorry, I shouldn't say postseason in the sense of playoff honors, but what I mean by that is postseason, like at the end of the season, at the end of the regular season honors. We're talking about player of the year, forward of the year, back of the year, rookie of the year, coach of the year. I'm just going to prognosticate my opinions on those. Not that that means a hill of beans, but I'm going to tell you my opinion on who should be winning those honors. So with that, we're going to do a deep dive here into from the Rugby Rant into 239, talk about week 11, get into a little bit about this weekend's matches, 2 playoff matches, the winners of which will go to the final in Chicago. And we'll be back with that in just uno momento. Yes, we're sharing opinion with fans. Certainly you're going to get a lot of opinion on my behalf from week 11, but let's hit it a little bit. One of the things I want to talk about is I think there was the opinion that Anthem RC could not make it into the playoffs, depending upon the results from week 11. And, you know, I'm not a math guru. I leave that to my wife. She taught math. I taught social studies. Maybe I got it wrong, but I don't think I did. So what do we know going into week 11? And then we'll talk about the games and how that impacted who made it into the playoffs and what we're going to see this weekend. Chicago was a lock for the number 1 seed, of course. They had 45 points. They were 9-0, got bonus points in all their matches. The next closest team was 29 points. That was California Legion. So they weren't going to be touched. They locked up number 1 seed, locked up home field advantage for the Monday night matchup. The question was, who would be the team that they would play? And by the way, why are they playing on Monday night? That's because this weekend there is Summer Smash event going on. It's been at SeatGeek Stadium several years in a row. It's pretty well attended, like packed, full of kids. And as such, you know, it's a very lucrative endeavor for SeatGeek. So kind of took the front seat from the Hounds, and therefore the options were A, play at SeatGeek Stadium on Monday night, or B, move the home field match to another place like Kuntz Stadium. And as much as Bryce Campbell and the folks over there, Kuntz, would have enjoyed that match coming to Indy, I think the Hounds really want to see this game being played in front of their home fans. And I got to say, you know, a Chicago guy myself, of the two options, would I rather be in SeatGeek on Monday or travel 2.5, 3-ish hours to Indianapolis to watch him play away sometime in the weekend. I'll take choice A. Give me that Monday night playoff game. So what are we looking at? So the other big part of this weekend was built from who would fill out, seeds 2, 3, and 4. And so California was sitting, as I said, at number 2, 29 points. Seattle at number 3 seed, 26 points. And New England sitting at that 4 seed with 17 points. And I'm talking about post week 10. So going into week 11, that's where we sat. Old Glory at 17. So while tied in points, I think it was point differential that the Free Jacks had the better of them. And so then Anthem rounded out the backside. And I think there was a feeling like, well, the Anthem can't get into the playoffs. That's not entirely true. So let's go through that a little bit, how this weekend's game shook things out. So California outright win. They win second seed. All they had to do was beat the Seawolves because, again, California and Seattle were playing one another in week 11. We'll talk about that match. If Seattle wins, they needed the 4 tries in getting a bonus point, and they needed to, or keep it within 7, and needed to prevent California from getting a bonus point. Yeah, that was a big one. California needed 4 tries, or they needed a win with 7 points or less. So that was a big one. Or Seattle wins and gets 4 tries, and California, the Legion, get only 1 bonus point. So, some confusion in there. But keep in mind, they could have tied. If it was a tie, Seattle gets no bonus points for tries, and California it keeps within 7, and that would get a tie. And then it comes down to point differential, in which case that's criteria number 2. Let me put up the criteria here. Bingo, bango, bongo. There's the criteria. So most wins, highest aggregate point difference from all the matches, and that would go to California because they had 53 points differential versus 3 points differential. So it was after week 10. So it was pretty much guaranteed that point differential was going to go to the California Legion. So with that, again, let's talk about this week's matches. All right. So what are we looking at? Well, let's break down DC Anthem game because, of course, this had some serious significance because Old Glory DC was sitting in 5th place. The Anthem were sitting in 6th place. So it had implications on the playoff table. Obviously, DC wins, and they put themselves in pretty good position. They would have needed a little bit of help from the Hounds, of course, because the Hounds are playing the Free Jacks. Again, they were essentially tied at 17 points coming out of week 10. So Old Glory needed if they get a win, they get 4 points, puts them at 21. The Free Jacks, as long as, if they beat the Hounds and get no bonus, then again, they're tied, and it comes down to that tie-breaking criteria. So really, Old Glory needed some help from Chicago, either prevent, if they can't prevent the win, the Free Jacks need to be prevented from getting bonus points from either 4 tries or from keeping, from 4 tries. So it was critical. So they in part controlled their own destiny. At the end of the day, I'm going to pop the scores up here. At the end of the day, the score was 29-21 in favor of Old Glory DC. So they did the job that they needed to do. Simon's Cross lads got the win in order to try to put themselves in the best position to get into the playoffs. What's interesting about this match, I thought, was the fact that the Anthem had won all attack stats except for clean breaks. I think it was in a difference of 1. So Old Glory had 4 clean breaks. The Anthem had 3 clean breaks. The other thing that I thought was interesting is turnovers conceded. Also, obviously the edge, because it's an inverse stat, the edge goes to Old Glory DC as the Anthem had 15 turnovers conceded to DC's 13. They also had more passes at 51% and territory at 53%. So by and large, the Anthem played a really, really good match. They played, by all statistical accounts, a good enough match to put themselves in a position to win. But, even at that, what about the defensive metrics? Well, even the defensive metrics had a little bit of a nod to Anthem, except the big one, again, was turnovers. So what happened to the Anthem? Well, I think, number one, OG won the set piece battle, which was critical, 24 set piece wins to 21 set piece wins. And the Anthem, the problem was, could not convert in the green zone. When they turned the ball over, they lost a lot of ball in that attacking green zone, and that, thwarted their attack, which I think was critical to the loss for the Anthem. The other piece I don't like taking away from players' efforts, but we have to acknowledge in athletics there are some players that are better than others. And quite frankly, the Anthem lineup, I think, had some shortcomings in some areas, and one of them was in front row. Elias Garza, who's a youngster who is promising, he just doesn't have the experience that a USA Eagle Alex Maughan has. Maughan's on the bench, Garza's in. Does that make a big difference in the overall match? Maybe not, but again, going back to that set piece battle, Maughan's going to give you a little bit more advantage, perhaps give you a little bit more of a platform from which to launch an attack. There was a lot of pressure early in this match in the first half that was provided by Old Glory. The Anthem had actually tied the match at the 61st minute. But at halftime, it was 19-7 in favor of Old Glory. So Old Glory, by halftime, the match was well in hand. And again, speaking to those stats, Anthem came back and played really well. All things considered, tied the match up at 19 at the 61st minute. So they go into the last quarter part of the match. And what does it come down to? It comes down to heroics by Perry Humphreys. He really added on that try. With the Robertson conversion that puts them up 26-19. And then ultimately at the end of the day, 3 points are put on with an added penalty by Robertson. So again, Robertson, a key component to the success of Old Glory in this match, just because he was able to, he scored that penalty, and then he had 3 conversions. So we're talking about 9 points, which is essentially the difference in this match. So Robertson, certainly a key player in this match. So at the end of the day, Simon's Cross boys won the day, put themselves on Saturday in position to watch on Sunday. That, critical Hounds Free Jacks match to determine whether or not they'd snuck themselves and got themselves into a playoff position into that all-important 4th seed. So that was an interesting one there. Okay. And then on Saturday afternoon, the matinee, I think it was a 1:00 match. 2:00 Eastern, maybe 1:00 Central, either that or it was 1:00 Eastern, noon Central. Nevertheless, it was that afternoon matinee between Chicago and New England. And again, going back to the scores for the day, Chicago Hounds edged out the Free Jacks 35-19. Quite frankly, again, this was one of those matches, at least early on, that was closer than the final score line. Chicago Hounds have been dominant all year, earning bonus points, as I mentioned, from all up to that point, all 9 matches that they had. They'd earned bonus points, so earned 5 per match. And in this particular match, it was 0-0 at the quarter game mark. So at the first hydration break, it was 0-0. That match, now I'll talk about this man a couple times, but a big shout out to Tian Lewitz, who, he's seen some more time towards the back half of the season, certainly than in the front half. And a big part of that is because Ali Devoto is limited by some injury. We'll see where he comes into play in the first weekend of the playoffs. But a hat trick by Lewitz certainly demonstrates that he's still got the goods to actually perform and do a lot to help his team's cause. So a big shout out to him. But what did this game come down to? Well, I think, number one, early on, it came out to the Hounds lineup. and this is what I think separates the Hounds this year, what makes them a different team than the other 5. Chris Latham had a very intentional pattern. Pattern's bad thing to say. An intentional mindset philosophy over the course of the entire season. You could see it during various courses of the season where he intentionally gave certain players off at time off at certain times. You know, if Rumball was off for a game or two and one of those was due to an HIA, Rumball was off. He had Maka Jones ready to come in because Maka had already gotten kind of a pre-mid-season 2 games, rest. I think that was maybe at game 5 or 6 or 4 or 5, somewhere in that neighborhood, so that when Rumball had to get some rest, he had the very experienced McLean Jones in the field. Same thing with Mason Flesh. I mean, those 3 back row players really had opportunities to get some rest when they need it. So, and that was the same throughout the rest of the lineup. Even Hilsenbeck, somebody as important as him, a linchpin, if you will, somebody controlling the flow of play for the Hounds, was able to get some much needed rest with the help of a guy like Reese Boltho, who's certainly had a wealth of experience in the MLR and has played very admirably. But again, that bench was critical. I'll get into that in a moment, but also the Hounds' resolve. And I think that, again, this comes down to their experience that they have with their leadership group, and again, the thick of this group, 60% of it was retained from last year, but there's a great leadership group within this team that are really difference makers. So that was one thing that made a difference. The other thing was the early mistake by Chicago led to 2 Free Jack scores. So one of those was a penalty that allowed the Free Jacks to get into the green zone and score. And then the other was a mistake on an out the back pass. It was a little tough to handle, and it led to a breakaway scoop and score. So those 2 things, I mean, those are controllable errors. Those are things that you don't want to see and shouldn't happen, but they did. Unfortunately for the Hounds, they were able to mitigate the impact of those. I think one of them may have put the Free Jacks up. I think it was 12. Let's see. I think it was like 12-7 or something like that. So, nevertheless, Lutz comes back, scores his first of 3 tries right before half. I think that was the 37th, 38th minute. And that puts the Hounds away at 14-12. And I don't think, then the Free Jacks score again at the 67th minute, and that puts them up 19-12. And really the crowd was excited. The crowd was into it, of course, because they were at Fort Quincy. But here's the difference maker. And I'm going to go back to those starters. At the 61st minute, we start to see all those guys who are starters, who are on the bench, come into the game. So within about a 10-minute span, at 49 minutes, all the way to 59 minutes, we see Forey come in for Beckerman, Abel come in for Rabolo, Rumball come in for Kinnevak, DeHaas come in for Basca, Luke White comes in as a super sub to support that front row, as he normally has been doing most of the season. And then you see Hilsenbeck come in for Bolta, and then Wall comes in for Tidwell later on at the 66th minute. So you're talking about 6 subs coming in, 5 of which are starters on a regular day. They all come in at that critical juncture, right, at that last quarter part of the game. And again, that comes back to a difference maker. And that's where really the Hounds started to run away with the game. It's that deep bench, and I've been talking about it all season long. The deep bench helped them win the game. Lutz goes on to score 2 more, I think the second of which puts the Hounds up. And ultimately, at that point, Quincy just shuts down. They knew their chances were, being burnt up. And they really started to get quiet, knew the Hounds were going to put their stamp on this game and ultimately go 10-0. So great job by the Hounds, played really well in Quincy. I think got the Free Jacks back. I think that it's one of the reasons the starters probably came in a little earlier than perhaps Latho wanted them to come in. He might have waited till 55 to 60 minutes to bring those starters in to give him a real good rest. But I think he really wanted to put a stamp on this game and go 10-0 and remind the Free Jacks that it's the Hounds' year. So we'll see if that holds true for the rest of the season. But great match to go 10-0 by the Chicago Hounds, ultimately end up with 50 points on the table and, go 10-0. So hopefully they carry the same mentality into the end of the season, at least from a Chicago Hounds fan. Finally, again, going back to the table, up to the scores from week 11, final week of the match of the week, excuse me. I think it was on late Sunday night, the late one on the West Coast. And of course, that sees Seattle beat the Legion for 33-19. And ultimately, because of the scoreline, Seattle not only wins, but they prevent California Legion from getting any bonus points, which again, it was pretty important here. And it leads to Seattle getting that number 2 seed and ultimately playing a host to the California Legion on Sunday evening, this coming weekend for the semifinal match of the 2026 season. So what about this match? Well, again, it was going to determine who hosts the home semifinal, and clearly both coaches, Hoyles and Clarkey, marked this one as an important match. Now, I'd like to tell you, I think that even though more or less regardless of the outcome, both wanted to play at home. It might have been tough for California to find a venue because, of course, they've been skipping around, but Seattle definitely want to play at home, and I'll get to why later on down the road because I think it matters, and it will matter this week. It's something you guys should watch for as you watch the game on Sunday. I think there were key areas here. Early on, California didn't look bad, although they didn't really put a stamp on the game at all. They looked pretty good. It was truly a tale of two halves, and that might even been talked about on the broadcast. But California controlled the game in both possession and territory. 57% possession, 51% territory. Not much difference in territory, but just worth noting. Seattle had 20 kicks in play to California's 8. This is an important stat, and there's a reason why, for a total of 513 meters. California almost had 2 times as much carry distance, 1,128 meters, which is pretty significant. So why do some of those stats matter? Well, let's talk defense first, okay? Because there's some stats within defense are important. I'll come back to those key areas. Seattle, very good on defense. That seawall showed up as the crowd had willed it to. 83% tackles to California Legion's 74 tackles. So the defense held out for Seattle. The Seattle's defense also made good on 8 mauls to California 0. And then Seattle turned over 9 balls, 1 to California 0. These are some of the key stats, key defensive stats, which ultimately lead to Seattle having a resounding victory by 14 points. It comes down to, in spite of those key areas where California might have had some ability and an edge, they lost some key areas. And again, I go back to some of those key areas offensively, but also these defensive stats. So let me talk about those offensive areas. One of the things we know that California loves to run, right? They showed the prior week, I think it was week 10, they ran the ball out of their out of their red zone from behind their 22, I think 5 times. And I want to say 3 of those 5 times were actually at the 5 meter, like 2 or 3 of them were from behind the 5 meter line. So they love to run. I'll talk about them later, but Bertrand has been a key player in how they play the game, and he loves to run. So I think there are a couple of key things that Seattle earmarked. The first of which, we got to play solid defense. They got to get their defensive structure in line in order to stop and mitigate that running, fast-paced, tempo-based game, right? Because 2 things come out of tempo. Number 1, Bertrand, if he gets that ruck speed down to under 3 seconds, he can take advantage of a defense that is unstructured, that has gaps and opportunity. Number 2 if he gets the ball on a penalty and quick taps, again, he can turn that ball around, whether it's a turnover ball or an advantage to them, and he can quickly go, take off, and again, make use of the space, make use of the unstructured defense, and find some space and gaps. And again, the team is fit enough to follow him and be on his shoulder for support lines. So I think another piece that it came down to is Seattle had to play well defensively, so have organized structure. They had to slow California down a little bit. They had to tackle well, and they also had to make California play out of their end a lot, right? You can't give up penalties, allow Milne to put that ball into touch into their, into the attacking half, and then either create another penalty, get close to that line, or get a full head of steam. And now they only have to work up half the field rather than all the field. Seattle had to pin California back in their end and make them play out of their end and be relatively mistake-free on the penalties. So they did that. I mean, Seattle won the penalty battle 9-14. Although they had 3 yellow cards, it didn't hurt them as much. So they were really pretty good at preventing California from getting free meters with the kick to touch. And then again, that transition ball, they had to, get those turnovers, win the ruck balls, get those turnovers, slow down or prevent Bertrand from getting his hands on the ball and continuing on the attack, or they had to kick to touch and really pin Bertrand and company back. So the other piece I think that makes a big difference is technically they were very sound in the set piece battle, 15 and 15 in lineouts, 9 out of 9 in scrums for 24 set piece wins versus I think it was 19 set piece wins by Seattle. I'd have to double check on that, but they were 100%. This is all in spite of probably area which I thought could have hurt them was yellow cards. Again, with that run and gun style offense, I'm a little bit more surprised that the Legion couldn't make use of that extra attacker, but they weren't able to, and ultimately that led to Seattle's 33-19 victory. So what do we know going ahead into the playoffs? Well, California and Seattle will meet in Tukwila on Sunday, and one of the things I think as fans you should look for is the Legion to have some challenges potentially if, again, going back to last week's recipe, Seattle can keep the penalties to a minimum, be very proficient in the set piece battle, C, create a lot of turnovers to again thwart the attack of that run and gun style of offense or attack. And then I think another piece is playing at home, and this is where I think home field advantage is really important. Playing at home, there's about, from what I understand, 2.5 meters difference. So it's about 10 feet difference in the width of the field in Tukwila as opposed to some of the bigger pitches that are played on across the league. Why does this matter? Well, in a more attacking style, you want to create space and make use of space, which we know the Legion does very well. Seattle tackles and plays defense very well, so that closed down space actually plays to their advantage, which is why I think Clarkey really, really wanted this home field advantage in the playoffs. 2.5 meters makes a big difference when you're talking about a game of inches like rugby. So it'll be interesting. Again, that's a game on, I think it's a 9:00 Eastern game on Sunday night, 6:00 Pacific. Seattle play host to the California Legion. And then finally, again, in a third match they've met this year, the Chicago Hounds will play host on Monday night to Old Glory, DC. This should be a very good match. There are some things that will make a difference in this match that I found out. I will hold those back. Just pay attention to the lineups, folks, because there are some critical things in there to look for. But again, expect that starting lineup that the Hounds really leaned into all year. I'll talk about it later, but the Hounds forward pack are really, really good. They do a great job at controlling the tempo of the match. And then when the opportunities present themselves, the backs find their space. The one player on the Hounds that I would look for, and I'm interested to see if he's in the lineup, is Ali Devoto. He's class player, and that's not to take anything away from Videla or from Lutz, but he's just a class player just because of his size and strength. That's not to say either the other two players aren't strong. It's just to say that, Ali Devoto is every bit as 6'3", 6'4". And he is a load to deal with because he's rangy. He does make use of his length to make the ball presentable to a support runner. So keep an eye on this one. Although I'm going to be honest with you, whether it's Videla, whether it's Lutz, Lopetti in there someplace, the Hounds have a great center mix that they're going to lean into. So I just want to take the last couple minutes of this. So what do I think is going to happen? I think it's going to be a Seattle Hounds final in Chicago. Speaking of Chicago, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on here in the city. I'll be down there on Saturday at Navy Pier. It should be a Saturday afternoon. Big fan event. Come and join me. Come and join Will Hooley. It should be a lot of fun. Some big time shenanigans. You probably see a boat race or two. There's going to be some great stuff. There's going to be, a skills competition put on and supported by Josh Macy and Lindenwood University. Shout out to them. There's also going to be a scrum competition with men's, women's, girls, boys, youth. So scrum competitions should be pretty cool. So that'll be happening. The MLR is really doing a lot to generate a whole weekends of activities built around the final. So if you're in Chicago, come down. It should be an absolute banger all week long. Should be a lot of fun, and there's going to be great excitement generated here. So, nevertheless, those are my predictions for the playoff weekend. But as we close out, like I said, end of the regular season, what about regular season awards? So we know that regular season awards are given every year, and I think there's going to be a change this year. From what I'm understanding is that the regular season awards are to be specifically based upon the regular season, not upon playoffs. There will be playoff awards given to individuals who play well. Again, I think part of the reason is you only have really two playoff rounds, the semifinal and the finals. There's not a huge body of work to base some, awards on. You're locking some players out from two teams if you have to include the playoffs. So I'm gonna go with regular season awards. My awards for the regular season. Again, I'll talk about here are the ones: player of the year, back of the year, rookie of the year, forward of the year, coach of the year. So what are my regular season awards? So I'll start with coach of the year. How can you not say Chris Latham? I mean, 10-0, the perfect regular season. They maxed out every bonus point at 5 in every game, so 50 total points, 69 tries. That's almost a 7 try a game average. I think it's a 6.9 average actually, but almost 7. 461 points. That's a difference of 209 points between themselves and the California Legion. It's 156 point difference between Chicago and the California Legion. They conceded the least amount of penalties, and this is a key stat. I think this is really important across every game, and I think it's going to play a role in the playoffs. 90 penalties, if I'm not mistaken, 9 yellows and 0 reds. The next closest team in terms of stinginess with penalties had 10 more penalties, so that's 1 penalty a game more. That was Old Glory with 100 penalties. They had 7 yellows and they had 1 red. So that's a critical one. And then the other key statistic that I think is critical is turnovers won. They had 72 turnovers won. The next highest team was at 69 with New England, and then OG slightly behind them at 68. So I think turnovers is a key statistic. And again, Chris Latham's Chicago Hounds really set themselves apart, set a standard in some of these metrics. So that would be my coach here, Chris Latham. I sure hope he doesn't go anywhere because we love him here in Chicago. But clearly he set a tone, and his services might be of interest to some team, perhaps back in Australia. Who knows? All right, next up, Rookie of the Year. For me, that's Campbell Robb. He had a tough battle between he and his teammate, second rower Will Sherman. I think for me, Campbell Robb had 48 minutes per match, so right at that 50, almost that 50-minute mark every match. I think he played 10 matches, all 10 matches, so that was an important matrix for a guy who's a rookie coming from the college ranks. You have to be drafted in order to be in the mix for Rookie of the Year. So I think this is critical. I don't know that we've seen a rookie, perhaps maybe Sam Gallo, of course, but Sam was hurt, had a few injuries here or there. Same with Connor Mooneyham, that maybe have kept them out of the lineup here and there the rookie season. But Campbell Robb was pretty consistent. So, for me, a big thing is being available, and he was certainly available. He had 6 tries from that hooker position, of course, at the back of the mall. That very solid effort, a really strong effort by him from that hooker position with 79 tackles. I think if there was a place where he needs to get better, improve upon it, just throws at critical times at high pressure situations. But that being said, he's had some bangers of weekends. He's been in top MLR, first 15 honors a couple times. So for me, it's Campbell Robb. Next up, Forward of the Year. This was a tough one in my mind because when I started looking at this, I really saw, 4 individuals that stuck out on my mind, and I had a choice, interestingly enough. And there were a couple other guys that perhaps I wasn't even thinking of, but I'm a back rower by trade. I played back row, so I kind of look at the back row. I think Forey from the Chicago Hounds should have been in the mix because I think he's one of the top, if not the top, try scoring forward. But for me, I look at a whole breadth of work. It's not just about tries. I think there's a lot of other things that matter. And for me, it came between Rumball, Jones, Flesh, 3 Hounds. When you go 10-0, you get bonus points in every match. Of course, you're going to have players that are going to appear on these sheets quite a bit. And then there's Corey Daniel. Rumball and Jones both played 8 out of 10 games. They both had 3 tries. Right around, for me, Jones had 79 minutes per match that he played. He's an absolute warhorse. Rumball had 67. But Rumball, had 80 carries for 195 meters, 111 tackles. Jones had 60 carries for 201 meters, so his average was higher with a higher tackle rate at 124. So Jones had a really good season. But then there's Mason Flesh, 9 out of 10 games played, 8 tries total, 66 minutes per match, 78 carries for 161 meters and 87 tackles. Pretty strong sheet, out of him in terms of statistics. And then Corey Daniel played in all 10 games, scored 3 tries, 75 minutes per match, 89 carries for 319 meters and 176 tackles. Really, for me, it came down to looking at Flesh versus Daniel. And I said, yes, tries aren't as significant for me in winning this one. When you're talking about a guy who scored at least 1 hat trick, who had a brace of tries, and I think 2 other games, he scored 8 total. Had pretty high tackle rate, had a great carry rate, had a couple try assists that were critical. In spite of Daniel carrying really, really well, and of course having a high tackle rate, I would give my nod as Forward of the Year to Mason Fletch. And by the way, Corey Daniel, I really think he's come a long way offensively in this season. I think we always knew he could tackle well. He comes from that wrestling background. But having said that, for me, one of the kind of chinks in his armor, if you will. And I love Corey. I know him. I've interviewed him on this show. I've spoken with him many a times. We've conversed back and forth just a bit, throughout the season, just because we share a passion for wrestling. But, his offensive knock was the fact that he would occasionally he would turn over the ball. He would knock the ball on. This year, I think he was a very, very good ball carrier. Not a lot of errors, not a lot of mistakes. And because of his size and physicality, was always able to make quality meters. So really nice season by CD. Great job, kiddo. It's good to see you rumbling hard. And I can't wait to see you, play well. It's interesting watching you play on the weak side, a flank, the weak side flank, as opposed to the open side. It'll be interesting to see where Scott Lawrence puts him in those 3 summer test series that we have coming up. So pay attention to that. So yeah, Mason Flesh, forward of the year. Back of the year. Well, this is where if it kind of came down for me, which of these 2 players, back of the year, forward of the year, player of the year, which one of these is going to be which. And for me, I went with back of the year to Brock Webster. Brock was absolutely fire. Of course, he won the finals MVP last year for the Free Jacks. Brock was absolutely electric, attacking from all ends of the field. Really great with ball in hand, superb in the air. I think I can remember maybe one error that he made in the air, going up for a ball in the air. Other than that, was absolutely superb in the air and just found ways to find gaps in the opposition's defense. He was phenomenal this year and a really great addition. I can't wait to see what he does in the playoffs. But Brock Webster, back of the year. So who's the player of the year? I've been touting this guy for all of the season because for me, player of the year is somebody who means as much to the team, his respective team, as any other player means to their respective team. To be player of the year, it has to be, I almost think of it like this. Could you replace him? Obviously, all the guys I mentioned, Rumball, Jones, Flesh, Daniel, can you replace them? Well, obviously you want them in the lineup, but I think we saw with those guys that all of them have had stints, except for Daniel, all of them had stints where they've taken and gotten some breaks, particularly those Hounds because of Latho's strategy. Have we missed them? Sure, we've missed them. Absolutely. But right? Were they replaceable? Well, I think Kennevac came in and served admirably. I think Earliana Warrook came in and served admirably. I think we saw that Emmanuel Albert came in and served admirably. And we had a rotation of guys. Brendan Harvey came back from his second row position and played weak side flank a little bit. So were they, could somebody come in and match their skill? I don't know. But I think there were guys that played in their place and did very, very well. Kennevac had some great matches at 8 where I think you said, hey, he had a hell of a game, right? That being said, so what about some other guys? We saw Brock Webster. I think Reese both came in and played fullback, played very well. Not to take anything away from Brock. I think he's a hell of a player. Again, my pick for back of the year. He's a hard man to replace, but we saw somebody stepping in his shoes. My point I'm getting to is this person somebody that is almost irreplaceable? And for me, that if there's an indication that somebody is almost irreplaceable, that the team functions differently without their services or them in the lineup, then that is an indication of somebody who means more to their team than anybody else means to their respective team. And for me, that guy was Gonzalo Bertrano. Played 10 matches, 77.4 minutes per match. So that's out of 80 minutes, folks, right? Scored 5 tries. He had, 27 defenders beaten. I think 532 meters gained. He had 50 tackles and 126 total carries. And I think I keep going back to this question. If his services are not available, does the Legion play a different game? And I don't mean different style. I mean, just is it a different team? And I think the answer is yes. They need him in the lineup. Even last weekend, week 11, he switched from 9 to 10 when, so he was still in the lineup. So I think for me, that's a pretty good indication. Gonzalo Bertrano is about as irreplaceable as you can get in the MLR. And that's my pick for player of the year. So there we have it. My full slate of picks, analysis broken down of week 11, how we might see teams play in this finals weekend or semifinal weekend. Again, my picks to click, and it'll be an interesting final 2 weeks. I can't wait to see it. I'm going to be here on Monday in Chicago watching that game live. I'm going to be back in Chicago for the final, regardless of who is playing, but hopefully it's them boys, the Hounds. But nevertheless, if you get a chance, say hi. I'd love to meet you. Again, this game doesn't grow without fans, and we're here to grow this game one fan at a time. We can't do that without your support. Also, the support of Rugby Now. Again, free shipping for orders over $200. Get your cleats. They always have cleat specials. Use the code RANT15 to get a discount of 10%. If you order by 5 o'clock Eastern time, you'll get your goodies. It's same-day shipping. You get your goodies, I guarantee it, in 3 days anywhere in the continent of the United States. And then, of course, also a big shout-out to another group out there, Macron. There we go. And there's some great stuff from their product line. I know that my good friend Tim Brown asked that that Macron ship out a zip hoodie. I'm really looking forward to getting it. It should be here this week, although it's 90 degrees today here in Chicago, so I'm not sure that I'll need it. Nevertheless, it is a fabulous piece from what he tells me, and I can't wait to get it and get my mitts on it. But you can go to the Rugby Rant merchandise shop at Macron, and you can get yourself some pretty great goodies. And our prices are better than some of those respective team merchandise shops from like the Seawolves, from OG, from New England. Our stuff is in better prices. I particularly like that contact top, the drill top. Awesome in the wet. And it really keeps the rain off you. It's also great layering with a hoodie for those cold days when it dips below 40. So, get some great gear at great prices. Check out the Rugby Rant merchandise shop at Macron and help us keep the lights on and keep things going here at the Rugby Rant. But we'll be back next week. I'm going to get a partner in crime. If it's not Scott, I'll find somebody else. Somebody maybe from the MLR Ambassadors, you know who I'm talking about there, folks. And we'll break down the weekend's slate of games. But with that, I'm Rob the Hammer Hammerschmidt. I appreciate your patience, appreciate you listening to my solo effort today. And again, get yourself on the tube, watch ESPN, check out this slate of games, help us grow the game one fan at a time with fans like you. Drop us a line, drop us a comment, drop us a like, drop us a follow, do all those things to help us keep it going. And with that, from the Hammer, I will see you at the next.